Well, look at plain frame windows and stuff. Some of them really old, the old ones.
Okay, so let's come to order and begin the Nantucket Conservation Commission meeting for January 7th, 2015. And we'll start the meeting with the public comment. Anything from the public on matters that aren't scheduled to be heard tonight?
I have a comment. Jeff, were you?
Oh, I was just mine is not really that important, but just wanted to let everyone know that we've actually changed our recording format. We're still on TV, but it'll still also be able to the same ways. But now they do live streaming for both meeting rooms. So now instead of this just getting recorded and put up, this is going out as we speak.
And
We're
being
beaming out
recorded
there
as well.
Yes, and being recorded as well. So no longer is it just recorded. So what I guess I'm trying to get is I can't edit you guys anymore. Before it gets out there, because you have to, be professional and behave yourself the entire time.
No more wisecracks, huh?
Your friends and family could be watching you in live
Oh, I'm
action.
sure they are.
Yeah.
They must be very bored.
Well, Steve, just one sec. Just a reminder to turn off your cell phones and take extraneous conversations out in the hall. And we are making both an audio, visual, and visual recording of the meeting. And as you just heard, it's being broadcast live to our millions of fans, I'm sure. And anybody else that makes any recordings of any or part of this meeting, you need to let us know. Okay, so with that, Steve.
Sure. So Stephen Cohen, I represent the Nantucket Beach Preservation Fund. You all familiar with that? So as a very brief update, I believe you know that since the Concom last met, that both the state DEP issued a superseding order of conditions that approved the geotubes with some alterations and provided for a 3 to 6 year temporary permit, suggesting that during that time period a long-term permit could be reviewed and approved or not approved for that project or some other project or no project by you. You also met in an executive session and appealed that superseding order of conditions, which is your prerogative. And on behalf of SBPF, what I'd like to suggest is that because the Concom is now appealing the superseding order of conditions and SBPF is appealing the denial of the local order, and we have two appeals, that the geotubes are likely to remain in place during years of expensive and frustrating litigation, and I don't know that that's really in anyone's best interest, and that perhaps working out a settlement of both of those appeals that would essentially adopt an interim permit approved by you that would allow for the geotubes to be in place instead of being in place under litigation, to be in place under a permit where there's maintenance and monitoring of those of that while we move forward to determine whether or not there is a both longer term and longer distance project approved by you. So what I would like to ask is that the Commission in a future meeting or whenever you feel appropriate decide the best way to discuss whether or not there's a potential agreeable approach for a temporary permit based substantially on or some version of the superseding order that was issued. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Well, we'll have to discuss that in perhaps an executive session or something.
Certainly, I mean, I can contact town council about doing that executive session and then how to put that discussion back into open session. That's there, but I can certainly talk to him. I talk to him pretty regularly, so
Okay.
And we can at least have that updated for the next meeting for where we're going to be in 2 weeks. We can figure that out in the interim and maybe even schedule that executive session in the interim. So.
Okay.
And actually, if I could ask a related question, just for the benefit of the public, whether or not this issue is going to come up at the end in the staff report and comments or not.
We certainly can discuss. I mean, for what's going on specifically. I mean, it's not on the agenda. Or if we want an appeals update. I mean, I think it's.
People might want to know what part of our appeal documents public and.
Well, sure. So just, if it's okay now,
Yeah, go
I'll add
ahead,
it in.
yeah.
So just as part of the public comment, so to follow up on Stephen's comments, The Conservation Commission did meet in executive session and authorized town council to file an appeal of that decision on their behalf. And that appeal is available. It is a public document. It's available either by contacting our office, or it's also up in a couple spots on the town website, or you can also contact Mass DEP, and they'll provide you with a copy. I will promise you that contacting the town is a much easier way to get that. But it's available for anyone to review, and it's essentially a document that outlines the concerns that were raised in regards to regulatory compliance with the state act. I won't necessarily bore everyone with the details here and now. I would definitely encourage people to read that, and if they have any questions, they can contact our office, or they can also contact Mass DEP. Scheduling wise with that too, again, there's also a simultaneous appeal of that original denial from this board with the local superior court. That's upcoming. I know there's something scheduled soon to set the schedule. I don't have that exact date in front of me. But typically what we see from the DEP in this situation is their appeal will be stayed pending action on that local appeal. So that's where we're at, and I would love to say I know how long that's going to take or that time frame, but I would be guessing at best. So that's what it is. I definitely encourage people to read the appeal document and also read the superseding order of conditions. It's obviously an issue that affects everyone on Nantucket. So take a look. If you have questions, contact our office, and I'd be happy to point you in the right direction or answer those. That's a fair update.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Well, I'm really sorry that we can't talk with SBPF or their representatives about some of these issues. And I have one or two things I'd like to say, and now's probably not the appropriate time, but some of the SBPF people. It seems that sometime in the past, Dave Franzuto or somebody said that the road was going to be condemned when it got within 25 feet, I thought, of the pavement. Is that correct?
There's actually Malone and Broom, an engineer engaged by the town, actually recommended that when the top of the bank reached within 25 feet of the pavement, that road could possibly be unsafe to use.
Right. I just can't understand. I go out there all the time. I can't understand why nobody's ever flagged where that point is.
What's what?
But it's,
There's stakes.
it's flagged and staked, and it's actually measured on a weekly basis and after every storm.
Do you have like little? Do you have flags on them? I just don't see them.
So some of them are just beam poles that are out there. Some of them are stakes that are there. But Mr. Franzuto is the one that set those and measured those.
It was Mr. Franzuto. The other thing that has to do with it, and this is just general, I want to say it. I'm not sure why the wetlands aren't flagged there, because they have something to do with this whole conversation.
That's a good point.
And I really would like to see that. And I just can't believe that with everything that's being asked for and talked about, that nobody's flagged the wetlands there, the first wetlands.
You're referring to the hearing that's continued?
Yes.
Well, I'm actually referring to the whole deal. I mean, in a way, I don't know. I'm referring to like they said they can go ahead and put this thing in. Nobody's like flagged the wetlands or talked about them or anything. There's no conditioning or anything. Anyway, I'm sorry. I don't want to go any further.
We'll bring that up during our open hearing, and then when we have our discussion in 2 weeks, Bam, I think all of those would be appropriate
Very
comments
good
at that
points,
point.
yes. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, very sorry to get too.
Anything else from the public? Okay, seeing that, we'll go to the public hearing notices of intent. And the following are continued to January 21st. Town and County of Nantucket on Baxter Road, and that's the drainage system. Merson, 71 Baxter Road. Duke 57 LLC, 55 Duke Road, Lot 16. Yeah, Masigs, I don't know how to say that, 51 Crooked Lane. Fraza, 21 Sheep Pond Road.
That's it.
And those are all continued until the 21st. So if there's anybody here that cannot come back on the 21st but that would like to address the commission, you may do so now for any of those continuances, or you can always submit written comments, which we appreciate. Okay, so with that, we go to item number 3, Duke 53 LLC, the sewer system on Duke's Road.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be abstaining from this.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants. Okay. Maybe just lay it like this.
Was it in different orders? I think that's 17 in the packet, but I think 17 in the sewer system might be reversed.
Oh, it's possible.
Yeah, I remember seeing it. Yeah.
I've seen it, but it's down there somewhere.
I might have switched.
Give us a second.
Yeah, it's down there. It's the next item. Page 90.
Page 9.
Duke 53. No, okay, wait. Okay, yep. Okay, Brian.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental, representing the applicants. We were last here on December 3rd. Proposed project, just to refresh everyone's memory, is a proposed force main down Duke's Road within the existing travelway. There's portions of which occur within the 25-foot buffer zone to either isolated vegetated wetlands or bordering vegetated wetlands. We've requested a waiver for that. The work itself is entirely within the traveled way, except for the very terminus of Duke's Road. And at that point in time, at the December 3rd meeting, we were just waiting for a file number, but which we of course have. I don't think there was much substantive conversation or questions, but so if there's any final questions, we're here to answer them.
Any other questions for Brian on this project? Okay, anything else from the public on the Duke's Road sewer system? Okay, Jeff, do we have everything we need to close the hearing?
Yes, sir.
You ready to close, Brian?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries with Commissioner Glowacki abstaining.
Sorry about switching those in the packet.
Okay, Loretta Lane Nominee Trust at 3 and 5 Loretta Lane.
Oh, no, Duke's.
Yep.
Oh, I missed.
17.
Oh,
That's
Duke
17.
55.
55 Duke Road.
Yes.
oh, okay, I was looking at the
I'll
wrong.
be abstaining from this one.
I'm
too.
sorry.
Was last one for the sewer system?
The sewer system, yep.
This is a whole device.
So, okay, so now we're down to Duke 55 LLC at 55
better
Duke
names.
Road.
Better names
Yeah.
next time.
Isn't it actually Duke's Road?
Duke's,
Roll Larry and Charlie.
I'm just reading it as it is here. It's Duke's Road above, but here it's
Duke's
all right.
Road, number
it's
7.
Duke
lot
Road, but
17.
it's called,
Here, it's SE 48, 27, 29. There, keep it simple.
Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants with Arthur Reed and Don Bracken. A proposed project, last we were before you on the 17th, is for the proposed construction of a new single-family dwelling in apartments. Based on some of the comments received at that last hearing, there's been some updates, and I'll review those at this point. The proposed pool fence was further tightened up, shifted further to the south, thereby expanding the buffer zone enhancement planting area, which I've highlighted in orange, which now totals 625 feet, majority of which is reestablishing the 25-foot buffer zone. There were some concerns and discussions about post-construction drainage runoff off the side slopes being proposed around the pool and patio. We provide a little bit further definition on what those areas will look like. The 3-to-1 side slope will be stabilized by native seed mix, mulched areas, and woody shrubs. And the woody shrubs primarily consist of bayberry, inkberry, highbush blueberry, arrowwood, eastern red cedar. On some of the native herbaceous species will be little blue stem and red fescue, just to help stabilize that slope. If it gets pulled in a little bit tighter to like a 2-to-1 side slope, then you're probably looking at a little bit more increased potential for runoff scour. So we wanted to establish a somewhat gradual slope and maintain it to detain and infiltrate any potential runoff off that side slope. We are proposing a 6-inch high berm, basically upgrading of the 25-foot buffer zone, basically extending from here to there to help curb any runoff that's coming off of that side slope. And that landscape buffer itself is not going to be proposed to have any permanent irrigation. There would be drip line irrigation to just help establish the vegetation planted. We are proposing to put some irrigation within lawn areas, up gradient of elevation 102. And this area right there would be lawn areas. And that's really the only small portion of irrigation proposed in the 50-foot buffer zone. Sorry, just in this location. And so the areas highlighted in pink are the impervious structures proposed within the 100-foot buffer zone. Nothing within the 50-foot is being proposed. There's been some updates to the foundation for the primary house that it's now going to just be a crawl space. Again, the bottom of the slab and foundation will be above high groundwater, but not meeting the 2-foot separation, so we are requesting a waiver for that. And we did provide specific locations for proposed subsurface infiltration systems that will collect roof runoff. There will also be a perimeter infiltration trench around the primary dwelling itself, and a series of those are proposed around those features. And Don can answer any specific questions relative to the drainage. Essentially summarizes the proposed revisions to address the Commission's comments at the last hearing.
So you pump the pool to where when you empty the pool?
The pool doesn't need to be emptied on a seasonal basis. It just needs to be lowered slightly, and it will need to just be pumped.
Out of our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Two out of the drain.
Exactly.
Okay.
Did they need a waiver for disturbance of more than 50% in the 25 to 50 with grading? Or
We
is the
did.
grading already, you requested that, right?
We did request
Yes,
it.
they've requested that.
Just to give you a rough percentage, there's about 66% alteration between the 25 and 50 foot. 33% of that is actual lawn. The remaining, or 23%, 43% is that landscape buffer, which will be kind of a vegetated landscape.
And that'll both be native species and introduced, or
Native species within the 50 foot entirely, yeah.
okay, good.
Yeah.
And it had mentioned mulching in that area.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can plug like a native grass species too, so it's not like yearly dependent on mulch for coverage?
Yeah, I think what we were envisioning was the entire area to be seeded, and maybe only use mulch at like base of some of the shrubs.
And you've got your depth to groundwater for the septic tech storm tech chamber. You've got plenty of room for
Yeah.
infiltration.
If you look at the detail, we show the water table at 95.3, and the bottom of the infiltrators will be 3.2 feet above that.
Okay, that's good.
The only other thing I want to point out is we added 2 drains in the patio itself, and those are also going infiltrated, so there won't be any net runoff from the site.
And it's not redirecting it anywhere but where it's supposed to go.
Correct.
Yeah, most of those subsurface infiltration systems are either outside the 100-foot buffer zone or close to it as possible, but obviously site conditions dictate where those are.
Well, it's a small lot, so it's a lot of change on a little lot. Okay.
Okay, anything from the public on, I think it's Duke 55?
Yes.
Okay, you ready to close, Brian?
Please.
Jeff, do we have everything we need to close the hearing?
Yes.
Move to close?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries with Commissioner Glowacki recused.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we go to Loretta Lane, at 3 and 5 Loretta Lane.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, Blackmore Associates. I'm before you tonight with the second public hearing on this application, which, just to briefly remind you, is for clearing of vegetation within the buffer zone to vegetated wetland, and then it's also a joint application or application filed at the same time with Natural Heritage. So there's a bit of work shown on the plan that's out of your jurisdiction, but that has been filed with them as well. And at the first hearing, there had been some discussions about the limit of clearing and the maintaining the 50% of the area between the 25 and the 50-foot buffer zone as undisturbed. So I've prepared a revised plan that does that, and I laid out the areas in a cover letter so that you had that documented. And to sort of show you quickly on the plan, the dark line with the X's is the proposed silt fence, and you can see up in this area on the north side of the wetland, we've left this area and this area all as undisturbed, and this is the portion between 25 and the 50. And then on the south side of the wetland, I modified the silt fence to come up to the 50 from the 25 to leave all of this as undisturbed. And then along this area by the driveway, they would go to the 25. But essentially, there is greater than 50% of that area that's remains outside of the work zone and not to be disturbed. And there's also a small isolated wetland down on the to the south of the property, and as well maintain the 50% there. We've received the sign-off from Natural Heritage for the project. We have a file number. I hope that addresses the concerns that you have. I detail the method of clearing and removal of stumps, and that then we would just seed the area with a Cape Cod mix just to not have other invasives and whatnot seeding it in the area. With that, I'd be happy to try to address questions or concerns that you may still have.
Any further questions for Art from the commission or the public? Okay, so Jeff, do we have all we need to close?
Yes, sir.
Art, you ready to close?
Yes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries
Thank you.
unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the White Heron Theater Company at 5 North Water Street.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. This is actually an application for the White Heron Theater Company, which is located at 5 North Water Street. This was a proposal for the construction of a freestanding theater facility to replace that temporary tent that you've seen downtown in the last few years. It is the only resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. There was no significant change to the grades other than the construction of the facility itself. The filings do require compliance with the Mass Stormwater Policy because it is a commercial facility that did require a notice of intent. The only thing outstanding last time is we didn't have a DEP file number. We do have that file number now, and at the risk of being too short here, that's essentially all we have. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, questions for Paul? Anything from the public on the White Heron Theater? See not. Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes, sir.
Are you ready to close?
Yes.
Okay, we have that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, that takes us to Kelly at 78 Union Street, the roadway Mariner Way.
I was going to suggest, Mr. Chairman, the next group of these are all kind of connected together.
Oh, they are, aren't they?
In a project. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but it's essentially the first one is the roadway subdivision, and then the other ones were filed as separate lots, I think, to give, when people are closing out and transferring properties and not trying to close out and do partials, everyone has their own and then to change around as they go. So I guess I would recommend going through them kind of as a group together, and then if there are any specifics, we can cover those, but I think that'd be easiest and quickest for presentation purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Probably avoid segmentation too, concerns.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of the project in totality at this point, so I'll get to segmentation. We had an issue with that protocol. Explain it when they're done.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Katie Barnacle, Senior Wetland Scientist with AECom, and I'm here with Jamie Anderson from RJ O'Connell and Rick Bodette, who you probably all know. This is located between Washington Street Extension and Union Street, down by where there's a parking area across from, or kind of kitty corner from Great Harbor Yacht Club. And there's an existing building there now, and there was a garage there. I don't know if what did they used to sell there?
Antiques.
Antiques, correct, yeah.
Mellows antiques.
And there's an existing driveway that cuts through, kind of loops through the property now. There's a shed down here with a garden. So there's existing residential use, there's buildings out there, there's stone walls, there's parking areas, open areas, cleared areas, a driveway, and there is some dumping, some debris here and there. There is an isolated vegetated wetland. Majority is located on the town of Nantucket property over here. Just a little bit is located on this particular site. So the entire site is within land subject to coastal storm flowage. And there is a 100-foot buffer associated with that isolated vegetated wetland, which is a bylaw-only wetland. So the proposal, and Rick might be able to shed more light if you're interested, this is in front of the planning board right now, and it's gone through a series of design changes, initially a cul-de-sac, and there were some concerns about traffic and safety, so now it's a one-way directional through roadway. The lot itself right here is about 70 feet wide, and the wetland's there, so any work down in this area would be within the 100-foot buffer zone to the isolated vegetated wetland. All work associated with the lots is either is within the 50 to 100-foot buffer zone or outside of the buffer zone, but just in land subject to storm flowage up in there. But the roadway work is within the 0 to 25-foot buffer zone, and in fact there's a sedimentation or retention basin that's proposed down in here. And there's limited amount of area for stormwater attenuation, but this area does allow for some retention of the stormwater. There's also storm, what's the word for the?
Subsurface storm scepters, basically chambered, formatted.
For two of the properties up there to reduce that. And again, we looked at the different alternatives. We are asking for a waiver for work between 0 and 25 feet for this work associated with the retention basin. That's actually where the roadway is right now. So if you drive through now, you might have seen some pink flags, which were the wetland flags. That's where the retention basin would be, and then the roadway would move further away from the wetland. You can always swap that, but then you'd have the roadway closer to the wetland. So we thought this was the better design. We'll be able to restore some of the buffer zone there that's presently altered with the roadway. We're also restoring some of the buffer zone up in here. That's part of one of the lots where there's some parking and clearing to increase the buffer zone. So it's presently in front of the planning board. The stormwater review has not been completed. Ed Pesci was hopefully going to get back to us with some comments today. But we can talk more about that. And then there are 5 lots. 2 are here and then 3 here. And I don't know if it's better to stop here before we get into all the lots, or see what the issues are. Any
Anybody have any questions on the roadways? Let's do that.
As far as pulling back, is there not also another resource area to this direction, that's the salt marsh, or?
Over here, it's
Yeah.
over 100 feet away from here.
Okay, so there's absolutely nothing else except this?
Yeah.
Okay. Because there's, Consu Springs is, I'm just trying to get a feeling for where it is. With the FEMA flood map, this is all underwater in the A zone? The A acceleration, or the
This is the AE.
AE zone?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we made sure all the datum's matched, so that
Mhm.
the high tide datum of Nantucket is, everything is all on the same datum.
So the A means a 10-year storm, or, I mean, for people that,
AE
Like
is
me.
a 100-year storm with,
Mhm.
is that with waves less than 3 feet?
Okay.
So it's not an A, the A zone is flooding.
Right,
And the
right.
D zone has waves greater than 3 feet, then AE is between the
In
two.
between the two, okay.
Okay, any other questions about the roadway?
Is it changing in width from existing?
The planning board wants this 20 feet wide with 16 feet of pavement. And right now, it's about,
Dirt road.
It's a
It's a
dirt
gravel road that's, kind of varies, I'd say between 10 to 20 feet.
Right.
Even up to 30 feet in some areas.
and they do want this paved.
Paved, like concrete or asphalt, huh?
It'll be asphalt, yeah.
Typically, in areas like this, we prefer gravel or pervious of some kind.
We've asked for shells, the planning board, we're not,
We're not getting too far with shell. That was what we initially proposed, so.
The
I
driveway.
think they're,
Yeah.
right,
the
with
driveways
aprons.
themselves, correct, yeah.
Will they
I
do
think-
Belgian or anything like that?
They might, I mean, we can certainly talk to them about that.
Yeah, the aprons themselves will be Belgian block, but,
Mhm.
yeah, like, again, we didn't get too far with the shells.
One of the, just to give you a little bit of history, one of the purposes of this roadway, at least as far as the planning board is concerned, is a lot for public access. It's also, they want to have it available, they want us to make it available in the event there's a storm event to pull boats out of the harbor. And so and I think that's the reason they wanted it. They didn't want it to be a pervious surface. They wanted it to be, to last. They want it to be strong. And so I think that, that was their impetus for pushing us towards the pavement.
Question, I guess, speaking to that, but it's a private way, just the same? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna grant the town easements for that purpose. It's gonna be one way. We're gonna allow pedestrian access through it.
Without a berm or some kind of way to redirect stormwater flow down a asphalt drive, you're actually going to increase flow versus infiltration you'd have from gravel. That's one of the many reasons we prefer gravel, is you don't have sheet flow, especially straight to the harbor, which is essentially
So we are
effectively
creating,
where that goes.
grading wise, we are creating sort of a low point right next to this bioretention area here. So this will all flow down gutter line and then to a sort of a high point there in the street. Again, it'll flow back this way, so there's nothing that'll be flowing all the way through towards the harbor in the end. So
They have good enough bioretention. You've got a bioretention on the,
It's right in here between where the wetland is and the edge of the roadway.
you don't need one on the other side?
we don't.
The
control
lot line is right there,
Okay.
so we had to put everything right over there.
That might alleviate that if there was some on the southwest.
entirely Belgian block.
No change in grading.
Pretty minimal, I think it's only for the roadway.
Right, yeah, we're trying to maintain, you can see in this dark green area, we're trying to maintain some of the tree buffer to both sides of the neighbors, so we're tying into grades as close as we can in most of the lots.
Okay.
Lot 3. We've already done 6 notes and 10s.
I have a side question. Has this already gone through HDC?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
Do you have a,
Underway.
sorry, a plan with all of, like, the proposed on it, with all of the proposed houses and the driveway on one?
I don't believe we have that plan with us.
No, we just have existing conditions in the lot.
Yeah, I don't have that plan.
It shows existing conditions.
Right, the plan we submitted to planning board didn't show houses, so that's all I've got for overall proposed.
This Lot 3 is this one down here.
Okay.
And if you're driving through, again, here's the gravel driveway that loops in. So this would be all to the, I guess, the south of where the existing driveway is. There's the shed for the garden. Then there's an open lawn area and stone walls there. And for the 50-foot buffer zone just cuts down here from the isolated wetland. And then the 100-foot buffer zone is here. So there's a little bit of work within the 100-foot buffer for the house and the driveway. But again, everything's tucked away from the wetland. Same thing, same footprint, detached garage, a little bit of shell, and then the Belgian block.
Sorry, we're up back to back.
4 and 5 are up by Union Street, and they're pretty much the same, just kind of flipped. So they're very, very similar.
Unless it's on the back of,
Oh, there.
there we go.
So here's the turn into Mariner Way. So this would be the northern side of the proposed roadway. And this is outside of the 100-foot buffer zone to the isolated vegetated wetland, just land subject to coastal storm flowage. The only thing different about here is that there's a little more clearing because there's a little more area that's not within in the buffer zone to the isolated vegetated wetland. And also there's also the storm tech drains for both these lots to deal with roof runoff, to manage some of the storm water. And Jamie can answer any questions on that. But same proposal, same footprint, same detached garage, driveway. And that's pretty much 4 and 5.
Okay.
And this is where there's an existing, or there was a garage here, pretty much in the exact same spot as the house, as the proposed house, and then the main dwelling is on the other one.
Any other questions? Anything from the public on the Mariner Way housing lots?
Or Mike, did you have questions on other?
Okay. Well, I guess we had seeking some information on the roadway at least.
We do have file numbers for all of these too. Sorry.
The file numbers for everything, the big question is the roadway composition, I guess, and the vegetation list?
Some vegetation, yeah.
Could those two be conditioned in an order of conditions? You know, that pavement to shall, if that happens through the planning board?
Yeah,
That would be great.
I think it can, Jeff can answer that.
No, certainly. I mean,
Less-
you guys,
less impact.
I mean, I guess to comment on those two things, the planting list, we've conditioned that many times before.
That's easy. to
pretty
do. Just
straightforward
say
and
this is all
easy
the
to
plan.
do.
Yep.
As far as the surface of the road, you guys can condition it, you know, as I always try to avoid tying it to other approvals, but you could certainly condition it as a pervious roadway, and then if the planning board approval doesn't, I mean, you can always
Then you
come
get it
back
amended.
as a modification to come back, or, I mean, it's kind of the applicants want, they can go that way. I mean, you guys have to condition in accordance with your
Performance standards.
performance standards too. So, I mean, planning board doesn't beat Concom, who beats HDC, it's kind of all equal parties. So, it's the unfortunate nature of the beast. But if you guys condition it as such, I mean, it's certainly something that if the approvals don't jive or a surfacing comes back,
On the HDC, that's why I asked about the HDC.
Yeah,
I still have an opinion on
is that they can come back, once the roadway is permitted, I would say if you have a surface that's permitted, you're probably looking at a minor modification as opposed to an amendment, because it's an activity that would have already been permitted on the site. So that makes it a little bit easier for you guys. It's not public notice and appeal periods again.
Even with respect to the surface?
Correct, because the activity is still the same.
Could we go from impervious and then change to pervious because that's what we prefer through the planning board, but it looks like we're going impervious. That's why it was changed to impervious. You know, through the planning board process.
Again, you guys can certainly condition whatever road surface you guys feel. They've proposed asphalt,
Yeah.
so keep that in mind. But if that doesn't meet the standards, then you guys certainly can condition it as you so choose. Certainly not try to sway you one way or the other. And then if other approvals or HDC approvals or planning board approvals change, you can always come back and amend or modify a permit. Or we can, I mean, they're all separate, so the nice part about it is if they would like to continue the roadway one to try to resolve that further for surfacing, they can, and we can do it with the house lot separately. I mean, we have a lot of flexibility with the 6 notices that are involved with the project. So
I guess it would be, I would request if we could look at it as impervious and then work with the planning board to get it something less. But obviously that's the comfort of the Conservation Commission. But, you know, we do have it as impervious right now because we think that's where it's heading through the planning board process.
Is the road the only thing that's kind of up in question before the planning board, or are there other aspects of this?
In other words,
Like,
close the rest of the hearings.
yeah, like where are they with that?
I mean, the planning board's is generally concerned with where's the road going to be, what surface is it going to be, who's going to be able to use it, as opposed to where the houses are going to be and where they are in relation, obviously, to the wetland. So I would say that's the bigger of the issues. I think it's headed towards this particular plan with an impervious roadway is where they want it to go.
They wanted 30 feet of asphalt all the way down the length of it.
No,
16.
it's 20. Yeah,
16
16.
feet.
In fact, they're giving us a waiver to make it smaller, as small as possible. I think is it a 20
20-foot wide right away.
With 16 feet of pavement.
improvement? I guess
you have like a 2-foot shoulder on each side then?
It's
Give or
2 foot
take.
shoulder and it's one way, so it is, it's something they didn't want traffic heading out to Union Street. They wanted it all one way the other way, so.
Oh, going into
Going into
to
Washington
Washington, and it's
Street.
going to connect to Washington Street Extension.
Yes.
Yep.
Is there going to
Yeah.
be parking allowed for people on it?
There will be
parking
no
lot.
parking allowed on the street.
There's parking right now, right adjacent to Washington Street, right here, where everyone parks.
no parking allowed on it. Other things that the planning board wanted is that each lot is serviced through the roadway. In other words, nothing's coming in off of Main Street for safety purposes.
And it's all town sewer, right?
Yep.
It just depends on how everyone else feels. And there's retention on the northern side. There's, as far as treatment of the impervious surface, I'm just trying to figure out where water is going to go on that, if it is asphalt.
Right, so the way it's graded, like I mentioned before, this is all gonna come down in this direction, this side's gonna come in this direction, and then end up in a low point right there. And an armored, rip-wrapped area into this fire retention.
So those materials going to come off the asphalt straight into the wetland. And it'll be measurable.
It's just odd that they want that road,
Yeah.
considering what it is.
And it's not just in old-timey times you would think it was the cars and but no, well, it's the asphalt itself that actually releases organic pollutants.
Plus, they're going to put a lot of impervious surface with the structures
Houses,
in there, too.
Yeah, so you're reducing the infiltration capacity.
This area that's already kind of got,
Maybe we can condition it as being pervious and...
then they can come back if they can't.
I mean, there's compromises like the Belcher block, at least, even though it's still hydrologically and physically sometimes acts in it can support the weight of a boat. It at least is not made out of volatile hydrocarbons that are splashed down and laid out like flat tar. But it can still hold. It's more expensive, but it's a midway point between pervious and impervious. That's the route I would go, just because it's just less pollution.
Well, we thought since we were, this far with the planning board and they're requesting this, that we thought this is the time that we need to submit it to the commission, and then if it gets pervious again, then that's better, to go with the most impact to and then maybe work back, if we can get more pervious
I'd
area
rather
in there.
go pervious and then have them work up.
Yeah, so.
But you
Again.
can understand from our part.
Yeah, I
Oh,
can
of course,
understand
kind of
that.
caught between
Yeah.
the two boards, so.
I think,
Yeah.
Again, we can only
won't be the first.
impact
We
our
only-
standards.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'm not trying to point you one way or the other, but
I would prefer
Yeah, I
that.
understand.
we condition to our performance standards. So
Yep.
we're trying to match the
Jeff, and
HDC
you're
planning board.
comfortable with something about the conditioning the plant list for maybe staff approval or something?
Yeah, we've done that a number of times before.
Okay, native species with staff approval.
Matter of fact, one of the ones we're looking at for a certificate of compliance.
Okay. Well, let's see, do we feel like they need to come back for anything, or is everybody happy with this?
I think we're happy with it as long as we condition it with a pervious surface.
Yeah.
If they get a complete pushback, they'll come back and amend it.
Yeah.
I think HDC is going to have a lot to say on it too, so.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
Did you try gravel with it?
Yes. Gravel can support a boat and
It
emergency.
does fine.
Yeah,
Just like dirt.
just like dirt, yeah. All
Can't
of
see
us
it.
live at the end of,
I can't see the
Yeah.
horde using that road.
no.
Not to interrupt, but to kind of keep it going. So
Yeah.
we obviously have kind of 6 open applications going. So
Yeah.
if there's more information that you guys feel that you need or the applicant wants to submit, we can continue hearings, or if we feel we have all the information we need, we can close them.
I don't see why we can't close them.
I think we can close.
I would think we could,
In the effort of
if you guys are ready to close.
progress.
Okay, so Jeff, we have everything we need to close all of these?
From my end, yes.
Okay,
Administratively, we do.
so do I have a motion to close
I would do it
we'll do them one at a time then.
Okay.
Kelly at 78 Union Street, the roadway for Mariner Way. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, now, Mariner Way, Lot 1.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Now to close Mariner Way, Lot 2. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mariner Way, Lot 3.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Mariner Way, Lot 4.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That one carries unanimously. And just have a sweep, let's do Mariner Way, Lot 5.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, we go to Griswold at 14 Sachem Road.
Thank you for the applicant, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, and also Arthur Reed, representing Jack and Carol Griswold, the property owner and applicant for the project before you. This is a project, residential project located at the intersection of Gosnold and Sachem Road. It is an existing developed site that houses an existing structure, a cottage, small shed, and a septic system that was recently upgraded within the last 5 or 6 years, located on the southerly portion of the site. The site does contain a bordering vegetated wetland along the westerly property line, adjacent to the Moore property. The site is bounded on the east and north by both Gosnold and Sachem Road. There is a wetland across the street on the land bank property, so the buffer zones for the site are the 25, 50, and 100, with the majority of the existing structure located not only in the wetland, but located within the 25 and the 50-foot setback. Those are highlighted here, I'll do it this way. The yellow line being the existing bordering vegetated wetland on our side of the site, the blue line being the 25, and the yellow line here being the 50-foot setback, with the existing structure located in the brown here. The intent is to pick that existing structure up and move it onto the site further away from the wetland, essentially outside of the 25-foot, no disturb, but a portion of it still being within the 50-foot setback. The site is outside of any 100-year floodplain, and it is not located within a mapped NHESP area. We have applied for waivers, albeit that this site is being, essentially, it's a waiver subject to a long-term net benefit provision in which we are taking the existing structure and improving the setbacks. The existing structure is located within the wetland, the 25 and 50-foot setback. Approximately 2,850 square feet of that structure is within that setback. At the end of the day, the proposed structure will be just within the 50-foot setback for approximately 1,025 square feet, or a net benefit of 1,825 square feet. We have also asked for a waiver for the 2-foot separation to groundwater based on a foundation system that will be constructed under the new dwelling. A portion of the 25-foot no disturb area would be, that is now lawn and structure, would be allowed to revegetate and naturalize, and that area would be left as a natural buffer between the lawn area and the wetland. We feel that just to stop mowing it is enough out there to revegetate that area. We're not proposing any wetland mixes, any type of shrubbery or so forth. We're just proposing to let it naturally revegetate by to stop mowing it. That's the application. I know many of you were on the site walk on Monday. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. The site is also serviced by town water. It's on-site septic, but it is serviced by town water.
Any questions?
I see a notation for a basement access.
Yes.
So they're going to put a full basement in?
They're trying to put a full, well, not a full 9-footer, but they're trying to get at least a 7-foot clear under there. We are going to go in within the next few weeks and do some soil testing up in that area and see what they're looking at as far as the groundwater goes.
So they're looking for dewatering?
What's that?
They're looking for dewatering?
More than likely, we'll probably need some dewatering too. That basement access is not so much a walkout. It's a it's a large, essentially a basement well, if you will, with a stairway down off of that side. So it wouldn't be a basement access out. It's not a walkout, if you will.
Yeah.
It's basically a large window well with a stairway down.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to know what kind of groundwater is there before we
say
allow
it's a
that
good idea.
basement, yeah.
You don't have any,
Well, yeah, based on where the septic is, the groundwater was down about 16 or so was an estimated high groundwater when we did the septic system.
16 inches?
No, elevation 16.
Oh, okay.
And you're at,
And the wetland elevation right now, the elevation of the wetland is down around 14 and a half down to where that low point is, to where the wetland is over here. The plateau, if you will, up on the upper section of that hump, if you will, in the lawn area is up around 19 and a half, 20. So that'd put your top of concrete at about 20, first floor about 21. Then if you subtract 7 feet down, say to a slab, you're going to be at that. You're going to be close to that groundwater.
You're
You're right at that groundwater.
You're 3 feet under it,
yeah, okay.
but you're at it.
Yeah, we're going to be at it. We'll be at it. Yeah.
And the leach bed is staying as is, there's no change in bed?
No,
size?
that's actually been upgraded. That was upgraded from what was on the site originally. That's fine. It's elevated. The top of the leach bed is up around 23. It's not a very high. It's really only a 1.5 story structure. So coming up out of the ground wouldn't really, we can come higher. That's really what we need to do is just determine how high it's going to come up. It has been HDC approved. The move has, but it's not. Whereas we're worrying about that 30-foot height issue. So we do have the ability to come up even higher if we can, and just integrate ourselves around the existing site.
Is the cottage a new building?
That building was
Still there.
maybe in the last 5-6
Okay, but it's
years.
already there, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's already there.
Everything, it's just relocation.
It's just a relocation.
Nothing-
That's right.
no
That's
new
right.
shed.
Septic system has been upgraded. The cottage is tied to it. Everything else, it's just basically pick it up, move it forward, and then adjust however we have to adjust to still try to accomplish that 7-foot basement if we can get it, or 8-foot clear in the basement.
And the Sachem Road, you said was going to be abandoned? or-
Sachem Road, the intent, and I'll let Arthur speak to that. There's been talk with planning, also Charlie Moore, the Griswolds, about abandoning that section of Sachem Road and letting that revegetate and naturalize and use it as almost a natural detention for the areas that we saw down at the end of Peters, by the Peters property.
We actually have authorization for the town to take it. We need to at some point prepare a plan that they would use for the actual taking, and the land bank is on the other side. They might well wind up acquiring it from the town after it's taken. Griswold's, frankly, are sick and tired of people getting stuck in the mud in front of their property, and would just as soon see it eliminated. It never should have been put through there in the first place, but it was a long time before they bought the property.
The only other comment I would say is probably you issue an order, just having photo monitoring over time to make sure it does revegetate like we think. I think it will too. This is one area where I'd want to check with photos once a year to see if it's coming back like we think. Hope it is.
Obviously, we'd be happy to do anything that would be necessary, but I think Paul is right that left alone, it will
Yeah.
We should have
revegetate
them
itself.
put something in there to sort of demarcate that line.
Oh, sure, we could, I mean, the 25 could be whether post and rail or some type of
Just to keep an
demarcation
over-
out there.
So the guy with the lawnmower doesn't
Yeah.
get confused,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's quite a few that do.
Yep.
Sometimes you just do rebar, or it doesn't have to be a split rail fence.
We've done stones before, we've done
Stones.
fences.
Yeah, just something to mark it.
Sometimes we've just left it up to applicants that,
Think of something, yeah.
Yeah, think of something they like.
Even
and
just
then-
metal edging sometimes works, or.
It's in our interest to make sure it works because we don't want you getting mad at us and trying to enforce something.
gotta come for a certificate of compliance.
Right.
Okay, any other questions?
And we do have our DEP number for this one.
Okay. Anything from the public on Griswold? Emily's gone tonight, so Cormac's here, yeah. Okay. So, is everything we need to close?
Yes, we did.
You ready to close, Paul?
Yes.
I have a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, Ferguson at 50 Halbert Ave.
All right, real quickly, Mr. Chairman, amazingly, we did get it, the file number for this one is SE 482750.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, Blackman Associates, in front of you tonight with the notice of intent for an existing developed residential property down Brant Point area in Halbert Ave. This application is for work solely within land subject to coastal storm flowage. There's an existing structure that's proposed to be removed. It's fairly small, about 220 square feet, and to be replaced with another structure that will be elevated to meet the flood zone building codes for within the flood zone, and some additional steps to be able to reach the structure at the higher level. And that's really the extent of the application before you.
And you'll just replant lawn at the old...
That's correct.
Any other questions for Art?
A grade change.
No.
Anything from the public on Ferguson on Halbert Ave? Okay, seeing not. And now that we have a file number, Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
We do.
Do I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Yep, so now we're at APG/DRS Realty Trust.
Number for Frost, too.
80 and 84
I know.
Walnut Road. Do you have a number for
There's
this
some
one,
other
Jeff?
issues.
We do have a number for this, Mr. Chairman. It's actually 2748.
Okay.
Sorry, that wasn't for Frost. That was for Frost. This one is 2749. Apologize. Yeah.
For the applicant, Art Gasparo, Blackman Associates. I will start off by saying, though we just received the file number, we are still within the review period for natural heritage. So my hope would be to present the application, hear any questions or concerns that there may be, and then we will need to continue in order to allow the review period to lapse with, or to have a response from natural heritage. This is a property located out on Walwinet Road, frontage on Nantucket Harbor. Some of you may recall this from, I don't know, probably about 8 years ago. So we had rebuilt this dock. This is the one of the two properties with docks out in licensed in Walwinet. And this proposal is to install a timber sand drift fence with sand nourishment and plantings. There is no, there'd be a jute mat just for the plantings, but no coir logs or coir tubes or anything of that sort. It's just very similar to the applications that you've been seeing in Pocono. There's details on the plan. It's the standard fence detail that's been approved of late, which it consists of an 8-inch driven, 12-foot long pressure treated post with a picket fence type panel in a zigzag fashion. This is one of the types of sites that over the years has employed the traditional snow fence, only to find it balled up on a fairly regular basis. So the intent here is to again have a 50% opening on the pickets, and hope that we can capture some windblown sand with the zigzag fencing, as well as to it's a very short bank, it's probably, I think I've got the top at the elevation is around 10 and the bottom is around 4. It's 6 feet high. Some of it's only 3 or 4 feet high. And with that, I'd be happy to try to address some questions. The access is on site. I've shown a sill fence coming in along the west side of the existing structures, and that would be how we come and go with all of the equipment. We won't be transiting up and down the beach. Getting down onto the beach is the bank is very very shallow, so we would just pile a little sand there for a very small ramp to get on and off. And again, there are 2 properties here. They're in separate ownership, but they're under common control, if you will.
Where is like Squam Brook coming out here? Because I guess I'm nervous when I look at.
That's the next property down, and there's a.
When I look at the aerial and I walk that area quite a bit, I mean, I think a lot of the erosion is coming from siltation, coming out of that wetland.
Sure.
So I don't know how that's going to play with this.
I could, on the aerial that was included, you could just see the edge of the brook to the west, which is over on the cross property, or I forget what the name of the current owner, actually, it's under, that's not correct, but the property that is to the west of this one. And again, we're stopping at that property line with the fence.
Yeah, it would be nice, I guess, to just see a picture of the whole thing, because you can see, I just feel like it might change the dynamic a little bit of the whole area by adding sand and beach grass, when I think it is.
You can see.
Yeah, it's a real wetland right there.
On the GIS, which was included with the application, and I'll hold some for everybody. I've highlighted the subject parcels and exactly the area that you're talking about, where there is essentially the brook that breaks out is just to the west here. But I mean, we're talking about very, very limited amounts of sand here. The bank is this high. It's not some massive, type of a project. It's really just to get the fence in there to try to capture some of the sand, naturally. I mean, it's. I'm not sure what else I could provide for you. Perhaps an estimated volume. I don't think that I had. I think I might have calculated that and put that in the application. I can just double check. It did. I thought that it would be about 600 cubic yards, and again, that goes over the entire frontage of the project.
That kind of leads to my question: is what's the average erosion rate for this area, and how distance to the houses?
Oh, sure.
I'm just
right. I can look into it and get back to you, but it's off the top of my head, probably a half a foot, if that. It's very low, and the distance back to the houses, I have a scale with me, but I think I'd probably be better off just to respond, in writing. But this is at 40 scale, so it's probably 80 or 100 feet.
So why do they feel they need it?
Just to try to, again, they've been doing the drift, the snow fence thing, and they've been seeing the damage there, and they're just hoping to, do what they can, sort of, to try to capture some of the sand and sort of have a, not a armored type of a project, but to do a little something where, sort of very similar to, and I'll tell you that I was debating on this one whether this should be an application of acquire a log like you approved not too long ago in Monomoy, but I thought that this was, given the other circumstances here, this would be more appropriate to be more in line with some of the Pocomo applications, where it's really just trying to mimic the snow fence without having the damage and debris.
Does water flow, like I know the other side of Squam Brook, water flows heavily after rainstorms.
Right.
I don't know as much on this side, so I'm curious, if we have rainstorms and water pushing out, if that's really going to do anything, at least on this parcel 80 or whatever, you know.
Right here or over here?
Closer to the brook, you know, where I don't know where water comes out there, but
My sense is that it's further to the west.
yeah.
You know, as evidenced here in the aerial photo as well. You
Right.
know, that this is actually, you know, upland to here, and then this is all wet. But this is where you see the actual flowing
Right.
stream
It,
is
the
over
stream
here.
comes out, but
This sort
water
of a delta.
seeps out of that
right,
whole
right, sure, it's
area,
all
so.
right, wet. Again, it's more of trying to capture some of the sand and just do a minor project, if you will, as opposed to, you know, some kind of, it's not what we would consider armoring in any way. And I mean, I've seen quite a bit of debris from the snow fencing, that you wouldn't have a snow fencing effort anymore going on down there. So I guess specifically,
Do you have any photos to the
I
snow
do.
fence? I'm sure that you just trying to get.
here's a photo sort of just of the beach, you know, area overall. And that's looking from the west to the east. I tried to just get you the sort of overall of the area. I don't know if that helps to show that you really don't have, you know.
There's hardly any bank there.
There's hardly any
Yeah.
bank, yeah, it's very
Right,
low.
it's very, very low. You know, that's sort of why we're just
It's a
trying
nice
to.
wide beach too.
Yeah. You can see just in
But that
the
fence-
far end of the photo, to help give you a frame of reference of where you are, you can see you can just see the dock here where it's coming down. So this is the entire this is your project area. Try to capture.
Pretty nice beach. It's the problem. The sand fence, it's the size is.
Again.
It might actually accelerate some of the beach erosion.
I'm really worried about the amount of water that comes out of that brook during a storm, like just that whole factor in erosion, not just Storm Beach coming, that it's not going to necessarily work the way they're thinking.
Again, we can, you know, it's the type of thing that we can have the condition for the monitoring. I don't think it's the kind of thing that you would want as heavy of a monitoring condition of having that you would for quar type tubes and logs, but perhaps an annual report with photographs, you know, so that you can sort of see how it's doing, and that would include then your nourishment volumes that are put in there to address, you know, any see how it goes in this area. Again, there's been quite a few installed recently in Pocomo that are really, you know, not too far from here. The bank situation is a little bit different there, but
This is facing.
this
This is
is
facing to the
here I
west,
can show.
basically. It's westward oriented.
So does that help you?
Okay,
So,
yeah.
you know, it's got, I guess I would say a little bit of a northwest exposure.
Not near as bad as the northeast, north.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get an idea of, I'm not quite sure I understand why they want to.
Well, they've been doing snow fencing, like, you know, so many property owners, you know, they don't they want to try to do what they can. And it's been, like I said, they've been allowed to, every year, we have the guy go down and, you know, all the stuff is gone, and we just feel like we're just littering the place. But we want to do a little something. They're concerned with, you know, and they asked me what are the alternatives, and this is what's being, you know, approved. It meets the performance standards. As near
That's
as
where we
can
start to
tell.
wander a bit also.
If I could just get to the, you know, the performance standards, and that's where I think that, you know, I don't see necessarily adverse impact from a result of the proposal due to the, you know, the open space of the pickets.
Exactly, they want to do it because they want to do it. That's really not what our purview is. Why do people want to do what they want to do? Our purview is more to do with impact on resources. that are-
I would
There's
be,
two resources,
yeah, and
the beach and the
I would
coastal
feel more
bank.
comfortable permitting on 84, I guess, than including 80, just knowing that I think we're just not factoring in that wetland.
Well, and there's 3 resource areas, and other areas that we've permitted this, we might only be looking at a coastal bank, or coastal bank and
beach.
coastal beach. This is a bank, beach, and a wetland, and it almost sounds like you're kind of trying to build a dune, like you're trying to replicate a dune. with this, that you're trying to create in effect
Well, I think it's how you look at sort of, it's a filling of the triangles, of the interior triangles with the sand, and to try to get some vegetative growth, to happen there. Some basic stabilization, really, without getting into armoring, is really the hope. But I can reinvestigate and I guess perhaps take closer photos that might help you, or perhaps I wasn't on island on Monday afternoon, so I'm not sure if you did a site visit here.
No, we didn't.
Perhaps you want to do a site visit.
It might be a good idea to go out there.
On next Monday, prior to the next hearing.
Yeah,
And
probably
maybe
good
that
idea.
would help, sort of, because I'm not sure what else I can provide
Yeah.
at this point to meet that
two
concern.
simple ones are
Try to keep it as
Better
a,
aerial to see, like, because you can see the siltation and how it comes out in front of these two properties, because that's the way the water travels, so you can see where the sand is.
okay.
And just the estimated average erosion rate based on, I think you can get it on aerials.
Yeah, I'll look at the CZM
Well, the
data.
satellite picture's quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, our aerials.
Right, I mean, it
is-
does show the siltation heading north.
Oh,
So, that particular moment.
The iron in the water.
yeah, it's the distance
Right.
to the,
Specific.
just where the building is.
I mean, is the concern, I'm curious, the concern with the wetland as it will fill in?
Well, I just think that the water coming out of the wetland is releasing nutrients and it's affecting the beach and the actual water there, and say
Okay.
scallops and eelgrass. So
I see
then
your
you're
point.
adding maybe pit sand and beach grass to
Yep.
an area that was kind of naturally feeding itself, and I think that input
Good point.
is going to get eroded away more quickly than we are anticipating.
Yeah, from the backside
Mhm.
instead of the
Yeah.
front side. Yeah,
It's
it
a
could be.
physics issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of debating Monday about this anyway, so maybe this is something that's better to, the big difference is the wetlands there, and this is
Mhm.
a very slowly eroding area, but, and the house is back quite a ways. I don't know how far back.
Okay, anything else? Anything from the public on APG DRS? Okay, so Art, I think you're going to need
I'm
to...
going to request a continuance until the 21st, please, and I'll provide some supplemental information and then look forward to a site visit on the 19th.
Okay, unless I hear an objection, we'll continue this to the 21st. Okay, thanks, Art. Okay. The Land Bank at 1719 Liberty Street and 8 Wesco Place. And Rachel had your debut at the Concom.
I know, right? I'm Rachel Freeman. I'm representing the land bank as the application here, the applicant here. Try not to be too nervous. The land bank owns all of the 5.5 acre property at the Lily Pond Park, and it's 3 parcels that make up this property. And there's an inland bank and bordering vegetated wetland resource areas on the property. And we're requesting a waiver to permit the repair of an existing boardwalk and the extension of a boardwalk within the wetland resource. Do you guys have those? They're small. Okay, great. There's 2 issues here. One is that we feel like there is actually a net benefit to the wetland in this area, because if we extend this boardwalk, this is wet enough that we feel like it will revegetate with wetland vegetation, and you won't have people walking through the wetland. In addition, we won't have to mow this area to maintain the footpath. And in this end, the boardwalk is so deteriorated that it's more of a public safety issue. And we have some real concerns about public safety in that area. And it being a hazard at this point.
It's usually underwater and very slick.
That one,
Yes.
no, that
So
one.
It is
are you
probably
going up about?
Currently, right here, yes. That is one question. We are going to have to see what depth solid ground is at. So we would like to not go up as far, we just want to maintain some basic continuity with the existing boardwalk on either end. Would you prefer to see it up higher?
Yeah.
Well, because if it sits underwater, they get so slick.
Isn't it right on the ground now?
It's super
It is
deep.
right on the ground.
I've
It
almost
runs
wiped
along
out
the
on
ground
that many
here.
times, yeah.
Right, which is why we're trying to repair
To
it.
restore the wetland, if you raise it even 4 to 5, 6 inches, then
Okay.
that water can flow underneath and
Mhm.
things can grow and it's less maintenance. I mean, I think if you are going to go the trouble of replacing it, if you
Mhm.
think ahead and
Yeah, lift it up a little
lift
bit.
it up, I would still be keeping the fiber grate here, but it's fine if you keep wood, but if you keep it at that level, it's never going to be dry.
Right, well, I will say we would like to go up above the wetland resource area,
Yeah.
but I wasn't thinking significantly up, about a
No.
foot. I was thinking more 4 or 5 or 6 inches, but if you'd like to see it more than that.
They'll last longer.
It'll last, I mean,
Okay.
it's just, the less you have to mess with
Right.
it, the better.
Okay.
No matter what.
And it's actually flooding a lot more lately.
Yeah.
It's
Pressure
getting
treated
wetter
isn't-
and wetter,
Yeah.
which is the
That
issue.
pressure treated isn't the same creature it used to be.
Then you might want to just lift it up a little bit so you
Okay.
give yourself some cushion.
What's happening around that area, it's probably just going to get wetter. I don't think it's going to get drier.
No.
That is true.
Yeah.
'Cause that's
So
what
I'm fine with the replacement. I just think
Okay.
you should think
Yeah.
ahead and,
trying to raise it up.
yeah, and try to raise it up.
Okay. We have discussed fiber grate. It has been not well received at the Gardner property where we put fiber grate.
It hasn't been, boy, I love
It's
it.
so much better for the environment.
It is better for the environment.
And easier to maintain.
Right.
What kind of complaints are you getting?
Dogs do not
Yeah,
like to.
dogs.
Dogs won't walk on it.
The dog.
Oh, I've seen dogs walk on that thing.
They get used to it a little
They
bit.
do, they okay.
That's the major complaint, so. So that was discussed, but we felt like it would be a public, little bit of a public relations issue.
Well, they just don't get slick like that, you know, I mean, they're so much safer to walk
When they
on.
let
And
light
it's
go
grown
through.
up.
Yeah, they let light penetrate.
The water is like right there at that new one too.
Yeah.
From yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's close right now.
Yeah.
Humber Pond has never been this high in the,
No.
Weird.
this early in the winter.
It may be cost inhibitive, I would think, though, this many repairs.
It might be, but I would go up a foot.
No, I
You know,
definitely will.
I just think it's, I wiped out there numerous times. It's always super slick and
Well,
It's
we can
like ice.
definitely raise it up then.
other than that, I think it is a net benefit to not have to mow wet
To
grass.
get people up out of the mud,
Get
and
people up out of the wetland.
it is a heavily used area, I think it would benefit from.
I agree with removing the invasive species treatment to a different NOI because that's going to be a dream come true.
It's major, and we recognize that,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, it needs to be done, but I'm
Right.
not sure I'd hook it to this.
Okay, I appreciate
Unless
that.
everybody else.
No, I
would
think,
like it.
no, I think you're,
it's gonna
this
take
is,
a lot.
I think this stands alone
This
just
is a
fine.
standalone, and the other one's going to take a lot of work.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you for understanding that.
Okay, anything from the public on the land bank at Lily Pond? Jeff, do you have something?
Yeah, I guess just hearing the conversation that's there, I guess for record purposes, I think before we close, if we could get all of that protocol and stuff put together, I mean, I think one of the things that's important to remember with some of this too is at least one of the sections is new walkway. That's been permitted before, so I think after hearing about how it's going to sit and the height that's there, obviously we would normally require other things of other applicants, like monitoring protocols and things that are in place, that I think hearing what the kind of that final design is fleshing out to be to kind of put that stuff together. I mean, I know it's for the land bank, but it's the same requirements that we have to take into account for whether it's the land bank or whether it's, my house.
So refreshing, yeah.
That, I mean, I think because we're looking at, and while I understand it's also public use, it's also, we know that projects that don't necessarily get held to the same standard to get brought back in front of us and thrown in our face. So completing that record and getting that design kind of put together better with monitoring and those things, with that being put together, I think, and revising, waiver requests and stuff to address those. I think that will provide us a better record and a better project. So I'm not trying to slow anything down to be crazy. I just want to be sure that the same scrutiny and same level of analysis that we're performing on other projects, we're ultimately going to provide here. I mean, one of the other concerns that I know I've heard before from the commission that I hadn't really thought about until just now is the area that's going to go potentially beneath these areas. What's happening with the water and any, is there any channelization of water that's going to go on for where those come together, or, obviously the impacts of the footpath, is water draining down there? Is that something that we want to address before the boardwalk goes in above, or how that's going to work? We're trying to cause extra work, but I think that can all be kind of encapsulated with now that you're not going to be sitting flush, you'll be up
Which is good.
with what's going to happen to that ground beneath. I know erosion and loose sediments have been a concern before, making sure that we can address this. So I think building all that together.
Actively revegetated then where it's pulled up off the ground?
Well, I think that's where monitoring comes into it. I mean, I know typically for us, for elevated walkways, I mean, the performance standards that elevated walkways be installed to not adversely impact wetland vegetation. So before we started tonight, was it sitting flush on the ground? Obviously, that's a little bit different now that we're talking about raising up. That's a.
It's got to be better.
We just need to address it record-wise and get all that stuff put together and be sure that monitoring that's proposed is adequate and be sure that it meets the standards that we need. So, again, I'm not trying to cause trouble, just trying to make sure we're all fair.
Okay, so let me just make sure I have everything you need. You want a redesign of the boardwalk showing it elevated, and then a monitoring protocol, and the monitoring protocol will describe vegetation moving under the boardwalk.
Just
Is that
revegetation.
The
How
purpose
it's
is to.
proceeding.
Right. I think you also will need to decide if you're going to elevate it, what type of posts and materials will be going into the ground, because obviously some of them are different, whether they're helical squares or
Right,
whether
which
they're
is what we used at the Gardner
Well,
property,
yeah.
and it's not proposed here. but-
or posts, but then we can factor that into now that it's coming off the ground. If it's laying
Okay.
flush on the ground, you don't have posts.
The photo monitoring is fine, but we want to make sure that it is revegetating and that you're not getting siltation or
Okay,
I'm not getting a gully under there or something.
Okay.
erosion, or that it's actually revegetate. I think it's going to revegetate naturally. It's going to be hard to revegetate artificially, but I don't know. Are you thinking that we have to plant some wetland plants?
I think that's for them to decide what they would like to do.
You would know better than us.
the only benefit I see to planting wetland plants here is that you might prevent the revegetation of knotweed prior to anything else.
That knotweed's so aggressive, though. It's
I
right
know,
there.
it might revegetate anyways, but
I
we
mean,
give
just
something a
truth be
chance.
told, it's one of my fears of taking the boardwalk up, is that you're going to see it.
Because it is
See,
right there, isn't it?
It's right there, and it moves really
It
fast.
is in effect a restoration of this wetland that was impacted when this was first put in 59 years ago.
Yes.
It's Lily Pond.
Yes.
So I consider restoration and not it's better than wood.
I'm just trying to make sure we have the most complete record that we need
Okay.
to deal with. Changes on the fly sometimes are tough with the record. So.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, so in that case, Rachel, you need to ask to continue for 2
Can I
weeks.
ask permission to continue until the 21st, I believe?
Okay, unless I hear an objection, we'll continue this
Can't
to the
remember.
21st.
Just come down and we'll go over that.
Yeah, you can always feel free to
Okay,
bother
great.
our staff.
Thanks, Ariel. You're the best.
To consult our staff, let's put it that way.
Don't worry, I'll call the chairman for, his bit.
Yeah, I've been out with her several times already, so. Okay, so the land bank at 72 Washington Street.
Again, I'm Rachel Freeman, and I'm representing the land bank for the 72 Washington Street property.
This one probably is the best one. Here's the other. Further than me. I'll get the other side too.
This property obviously abuts the harbor and contains a beach resource area as well as a dune resource area, and the work that and is completely within the flood zone. We are proposing to move the garage and demolish the house and restore the area with compatible materials and revegetate it with beech trees. In addition, we're proposing putting in a series of posts to tie up dinghies or kayaks to, because that's one of the issues that we have in this area is boats littering the beach, as you can see there, and a split rail fence along the roadside to just ensure that nobody is driving on, nobody's driving onto the beach directly.
And where would you install the posts?
The proposed posts are down in this area. This area is old. The beach really does come to here and is only stopped by the house. So I'm guessing the beach will be back in here when we actually, all is said and done. But the post will probably be right in this region.
I was going to recommend instead of post, and this is just my suggestion, a portable system that you can put out there in the summer and remove in the winter. I think posts are going to accelerate beach loss and erosion there, and just be something to cause trouble. I mean, that'd just be my suggestion, to put a portable dinghy rack that you can just install there. People can put their dinghies, and then when it's wintertime, you can pull it.
I think the land bank is pretty open-minded about what that looks like. Basically, what they're trying to do is to provide something that will allow them to then manage the beach. They have now a routine in the areas where they do have dinghy racks, where at a certain time of year, all things go. And so if nobody takes it away, then they take it away, and that allows them to manage it. So I think they're looking for some system there, and are pretty open-minded about what that is.
That's my preference, to install a post into a beach. Even though it's a minor thing, it's still a structure. It still can get battered, and it's just more trouble than it's worth, in my opinion. It's not permanent.
In terms of resource impact?
You've got a giant post, you're displacing beach. By putting a post there, you're causing erosion around that post. You're encouraging long-term, year-round dinghy storage. I mean, I just don't understand why a structure is on a beach. If you can put a portable dinghy rack there, that it's going to work just as well. The sea level rise is only going to be underwater anyway.
Dinghy racks portable though? I mean,
Most of them are buried, yeah.
most of them are pretty heavy and they're going to get washed away in the storm.
Well, it wouldn't be left in the winter. It'd be pulled out in the winter. So it'd just be in the summertime.
Does anybody do that though?
Yeah, they do it. Almost all the land banks.
One suggestion that Bruce had a moment ago, which is something we could definitely entertain if it's of interest, is underneath this deck, there's probably actually about 4 piers. And we could just potentially leave those there, and if you
See how that works, yeah.
and if they're in good enough shape to be left there, we could just leave those and see if that was effective when we're demolishing
If
the
it's
house.
something that's not a new structure inside a resource area, that might be fine.
Okay.
I try to minimize, I mean, they just form areas where erosion can occur around it. That would be fine for now.
Well, I think there's some kind of a water pipe coming out on the beach down here somewhere, isn't there? Are there any
There
issues with that thing?
is. We did discuss that with Kara Bezanowski. They have a grant in to repair all of those in the near future. I asked her what the near future was, and she suggested it was probably within the next year. In the meantime, the land bank is going to leave the pipe there, but make sure that there's no safety risks associated with it. So there's broken pieces that we'll just remove from the beach. But there's not a ton we can do about it. If we have to, we'll feel like, we'll flag it in some way that people can be aware of it.
Is it just a stormwater drain from the road?
It is. And it's just highly deteriorated.
And you're going to do dune restoration up on
Yes,
the...
we are looking at putting compatible sediments, so probably some sort of beach sand in the crawl space where the house is removed. And then there is a slight change in topography here, and we could match the existing grade of the property next door to prevent any sort of additional increase in storm flowage over onto the road, and just simply revegetate it with beach grass. We're really trying to match, this is the land bank's property over here, and we're really trying to match what's happening here, which is not actually depicted well by that aerial because the aerial's rather old.
Where's Francis Street from? This building still stays with this building?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for land bank?
Probably need an estimate on the volume of sand they're going to bring in. That would be information we need. Protocol for planting the beach grass, which I'm sure is easy enough. I'm fine with trying those piers to start with, before you install stuff, but I'd be happy, I don't know, photo monitoring to make sure that it's not causing your dune to get washed away prematurely.
Do you want us to try the piers that are under the deck first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Installing
Right.
anything.
Okay, that sounds good.
If it doesn't work, then come back to us.
Okay. So anything from the public on the land bank on Washington Street? Okay. So Rachel, you want to come back again in 2 weeks on this one?
Yes. Can I please continue this until the 21st as well?
So here an objection, we'll continue this to the 21st. Okay, thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to amended orders of conditions. Crowder at 21 Eel Point Road. Oh, excuse me, 191.
Okay, all right. Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering, with Kevin Gale, representing the applicant. This is for an amended order of conditions for changes, which primarily include a final landscape plan and some revised layout of the garage and driveway area. First, we'll look at the area within the 100-foot buffer zone of the coastal bank. To my right is the previously approved plan. To the left is the new plan. The pool is in the same location. The pool has actually been reduced in size by about 113 square feet. We also reduced the patio area that was approved, and we're showing a more specific layout of the lawn areas. We've also added some walls that are 2.3 feet high. The previous plan, we had a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 slope graded. All work is still outside the 50-foot buffer zone, all structures. Limit of work has stayed the same. Proposing dry wells as we had before to reduce the runoff from the building itself. And that's the major changes within the coastal bank buffer. Also, we've added a pool fence location, again, outside the 50-foot buffer. A lot of the changes that you see on the plans are outside the buffer zones. To the east is a bordering vegetated wetland. You can see the 100-foot buffer that I've highlighted in orange on these plans. The original plan, the limit of work went right up to the 100-foot buffer. We changed the garage location and the driveway configuration, and slightly changed the driveway that goes along Eel Point Road up to the neighboring property. With that, some of the grading did result in going into the 100-foot buffer by about 10 feet. But the closest, towards Eel Point Road, the closest work would be 90 feet from that bordering vegetated wetland, which is across the road on Eel Point Road.
Any questions? Okay. Anything from the public on Crowder on Eel Point Road?
I have something really quick.
Yeah, go ahead,
We
Jeff.
discussed it before in the original notice, and it doesn't really impact, but they sent the comments in. It related to, there was a easement that runs across the property for access to a neighboring property. They sent in some concerns about that easement. The easement's outside of our jurisdiction, so I explained that we don't really have any say into that, but wanted to at least bring forward that they had submitted comments, and that we had kind of dealt with them at the staff level, but I didn't want them to review and know that their comments had been round filed or tested them with. So they submitted a comment letter they had submitted with the previous filing again. But again, it's outside of the jurisdiction, something we don't have jurisdiction over anyways.
Okay. There's no other questions or comments. Jeff, do you have a recommendation on this?
I recommend that we could issue this as an amended order of conditions.
Do I have that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. With Commissioner Oaktie recused.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Sanford at 15 Meter Street.
Again, Don Bracken from Bracken Engineering, representing the applicant. I'll just quickly go through the itemized list of modifications from the previously approved plan. We've changed the datum to 88 datum to reflect the new flood maps, including the new flood elevation. Since our last approval, they've gone back and forth with HDC and ZBA a few times, resulting in some site plan changes, which include an increase in total square footage of the buildings themselves by about 206 square feet. Cottages A and B, cottage A increased by about 154 square feet, cottage B increased by 70 square feet, and D and C were reduced by 9 square feet with some architectural changes. On the previous plan, we had 4 proposed shell parking spaces. On the new plan, we also have 4 proposed shell parking spaces, but in different locations. I believe the ZBA also required us to add 2 other spaces, which will be, they actually be in the lawn as reinforced turf spaces. We had some utility changes because of the building reconfigurations. Also, a landscape plan has been completed in which they added a proposed stone patio for each cottage, and also added a fence around the perimeter of the property. And again, this is strictly land subject to coastal storm flowage and no other resource areas. We're not within any other resource areas or buffer zones of them.
Okay. Any questions?
Storm drain changes, you're just using this catch basin and you've got dry wells.
Yeah, there's, if you recall, the groundwater is only about 12 or 18 inches deep.
Yeah.
And what we did show, we don't know, that's not the full plan, but same as the previous plan, all the downspouts will go into a crushed down surface area, and we'll try to get as much infiltration as possible through that.
So nothing changed with your.
Nothing changed with that.
Okay.
There's a foundation request too, to change the foundation?
No changes. Actually, the original approval was for both piles or the standard crawl space foundation system, and they are going to go with the piles here, so there'll be even less disturbance than what was approved.
That's probably the smartest.
Yeah, I think after they weighed the cost of digging out, there's 4 or 5 feet of peat, so they'd have to remove the peat, and so it's going to be more expensive than put the piles in, which is, like I said, a lot less disturbance.
Okay. Any Anything from the public on Sanford on Meter Street? See not. Jeff, do you have a recommendation?
I recommend this could also be issued as an amended.
So we need to actually close the hearing and issue the,
Yep. That'd be the motion to close and issue.
do I have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
And even though we didn't say it, Crowder, we should have closed that hearing too, which we didn't quite do. But okay, public meeting, minor modifications, Desert Island LLC at 17 Delaney Road, Lot 5.
For the applicant, Jeff Sparrow, Blackmore Associates. Before you tonight to request a minor modification to the approved plan, which involves some minor changes to the structure. This was the, you may recall, there was several lots on this property that had been subdivided and subject to orders of conditions that we did for each of the lots. This was the lot that had the existing house on it. And we have approval for a crawl space foundation, but based on additional soil investigations done on the adjacent lot, where we found that we were able to find sand, and we modified the one next door to be able to put in a full foundation without having the water problems we initially had anticipated. Requested a minor modification to also put a full foundation under this house instead of a crawl space. There's no change to the limit of work. The result of having a full foundation does require some additional window wells, so we've shown those on the plan. The other change, again, there's been finalization of the plans, if you will, and there was a porch that was approved. This is outside of the 50 that ran, if you will, east-west, and now we're proposing that porch run north-south. And then we also have realized that there needed to be HVAC air conditioning units associated with the overall structure. So we've added those to the plan just in an effort to, get everything on there for this modification. And those are also outside of the 50-foot buffer zone. Two of the window wells are between the 25 and 50, but again attached to the existing house and within the area of existing lawn and disturbance. So we don't see any adverse impact from the window wells. The house will have gutters connected to downspouts that'll go to the infiltration facilities. So really we see this as a fairly minor change to the approval, and hope that you would agree and be here to address the questions or concerns that you may have with the change.
Any questions? Any dewatering going to be needed with the foundation?
Yeah, there could be. It'll be temporary, and we would go out to the storm drains, the DPW permission. That's what we did on the other one as well.
You're doing a foundation and a basement. You've done enough.
Exactly. Right. So in other words, so that there was an approval for a crawl space. Where it's essentially just adding a few feet onto what the approval was, and then they have a place to put mechanicals and that sort of thing.
Okay, there's no further questions or comments. Jeff, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, I recommend this could be issued as a minor modification.
Do I have that motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, request for determination. The Chirina Sisters LLC at 100 and 112 Nantucket Road.
David Haynes was going to be here for this, but couldn't make it to the island tonight, so I'm a rather poor stand-in for him, I'm afraid, but I'm here. I understand that David has conferred with Bruce, and that they are essentially in agreement on the wetland establish here.
Okay, so what kind of boundaries are we looking at for, just a wetland?
These flags, or including all the flags on the,
Yeah, I guess that would be the concept.
Correct. It's the flags for the vegetated wetlands that are there. They're not proposing any work at this point.
Right.
Sure
Okay,
I don't miss one because there's a lot going on. You can see there's the large bordering vegetated wetland on the west, and then there's the other large vegetated wetland on the southern portion, and then there's also the flood zone boundary.
and an IVW.
Do we have a recommendation on this?
Yeah, we had our staff go out and look at it. Lauren and I did. I would recommend the positive 2A confirming those resource area boundaries.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Let's hold on just a minute, Mike.
I think they are existing walking paths.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I just,
Yeah, they're shown. Again, no plan to do
Nothing
anything at the
new,
present
but
time.
you're trying to memorialize that.
Yeah, I just thought
Yeah.
it was a good time to do that before the process.
And all the
moved forward.
wetland flags are fine.
Yes, they are. They're fine.
Okay, so I have a second on the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arthur. Keep up the good work.
we'll tell David that you were faster than he is.
Okay, Tambourine Partners LLC at that's withdrawn.
Well,
We need to do a withdrawal.
Except that was actually something that should have been in as a notice, and you'll see it again next time as a notice.
Oh, instead of an RDA. So no, I need to make a motion to accept that withdrawal.
Pretty fantastic.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mr. Mandy at 10 Auriga Street. Sounds like it should be on some tropical island.
1 second. This is David Haynes' project as well, and I told him that I would cover for him tonight since he was unable to make it to the island. I'll just get out the other side. Sorry. This is also just for resource area boundary verification, and Lauren Tyler reviewed it and agrees. There are a couple issues with this one that I just wanted to bring up really quickly that I wanted to include, and something that we spoke with David and the applicant here, that there were some areas of brush cutting where they had cut on to a neighbor's property within the buffer zone to those wetlands. We were going to suggest, and they are amenable to essentially installing a split rail fence outside the 25-foot setback there and discontinuing that practice. That being said, there's also, just in case someone ever goes out there, there's also a lined pond on the lot that's landscaping. It's not connected to groundwater or functioning. It's just a pool. The bigger issue was the path that was cut down to get to Wee Weeder Pond and the cutting off of their property through there. So I think what our ultimate recommendation would be to allow them to put up a fence of some kind to prevent them from further cutting.
Will that path regenerate, refill in?
Yes. It's pretty brushy, so I don't think it will be significant. But that being said, I guess my ultimate recommendation on that one would be the positive 2A, confirming the resource area boundaries, and then the negative 3 to allow for that work to take place and not require a notice of intent.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, so that takes us to certificates of compliance. Baker, the Baker lot, nominee trust at 199R Hummock Pond Road.
This one we've seen a lot of in the last couple of years. if you guys don't remember, this was for the construction of 3 little dwellings and some landscape walls and some things out on the lot out by Helmick Pond. So here's the pond here, and then it comes in down the long driveway. I would say that
Wet yard.
yeah, it was constructed in compliance. We originally had to amend the order because there was a path to the pond to include and some brush cutting that's been rectified. I do have, however, I want to say this is one where I had a recommended ongoing condition.
They've allowed us to revegetate things, but it was cut down into.
Correct. They
Cut down.
is the recommended condition that I had to go forward was condition number 20. That was just the appropriate markers as approved by commission staff shall be installed at the edge of the undisturbed buffer to prevent accidental or unintentional mowing of the buffer. Just to keep that going forward, just to kind of memorialize that those needed to stay in.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Was there another one?
Nope, that was the other one for that one.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, Desert Island LLC at 19 Delaney Road, lot number 6.
Correct. So we just saw a minor modification for one of the other lots here. So this is the house that we were just talking about being completed. So this is the house that's constructed. It's constructed in compliance in the patio. Everything essentially matches the plantings, look good. But I also had an ongoing condition for this one as well that I was going to recommend also number 20. And that condition was just that they provide a monitoring report and photographs for that 3-year period that's there. So since those plantings just went in, just to kind of get those reports to be sure that that had gone in, because it's revegetating an area that was that asphalt roadway right adjacent to the wetland, so in that immediate buffer zone area. So I thought if we continued that to get at least those photos, they'll be taking them for all the other 3 lots that are there, so it's certainly not anything burdensome. And I just wanted to clarify too, they did submit a planting plan that we approved at the staff level by the condition prior to those plantings going in, so
Okay,
all
so
as well.
we have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance with ongoing condition number 20.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, Nantucket Marine, 20 North Cambridge Street.
Paul is coming.
Hi. Thank you again, Paul Santos, Nantucket Surveyors. This is a certificate of compliance for the installation of essentially the washdown facility at Nantucket Marine, which included a small storage shed to hold the recycling system, and then the amended order, which included the enclosing or the construction of the building over the actual washdown pad itself. So all the work's been done in compliance with the order, and we're asking to close that out.
I will add really quickly, there are a couple of conditions that were put on the order that I was going to suggest, numbers 18, 19, and 20. And they're essentially conditions that monitor the amount of water being used by that facility. I'll spare you the specifics, but it's essentially a yearly report that just demonstrates just how much water they're moving through that facility and through that system, just to be sure that it's running at the correct capacity. But it's the conditions really just the start of every year they provide us the report, and one of the components of that report is just a monthly breakdown of how much water and it's metered going in. So
yeah, I mean, I think there was a testing component in that too. I mean, we prefer not. We've done that since, I think we've done the yearly report since 2008. I think it is. Obviously, we prefer not to have to continue that on. I mean, it's fine for the life of the permit, but rather than having to do that every year, I'd prefer, if we could not have it, I'd actually.
So, I mean, they have provided those reports. It certainly, I mean, it's
they're pretty substantial.
No, I mean, what do they say?
No, it's basically, there was twofold. What we did is we provided, under the upland order, there was another requirement. We provide monthly rainfall data. which they collect out there anyway. We
Right.
provided on a yearly basis monthly rainfall data. We provided the amount of water that went through the recycling system, and then we provided a testing report on the amount of material that was actually generated and taken off of site, which to the most that we've ever generated under 1 year is, I think, less than a 55-gallon drum of waste material that gets taken off. That material has been tested. We've given you the lab results, and then that gets taken off the site.
And so, yeah, it doesn't change the procedure on, I was thinking like solids TSS or.
No, I mean, it's been, like I said, we've probably done it now we've done it since 2008. I haven't done a report for this year because January 31st is typically the submittal date that we do. But, they've got a pretty good handle on.
Yeah, we haven't
the
had any
operation.
problems.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to take them off before you guys at least had to say. So there's been no red flags or incidents.
No.
That's for sure. You guys have received other reports, so.
Yeah. And they've got
It's up to you guys.
They've got a pretty good, Chris is assigned basically to that component. I mean, they've been very good it's almost a critical, they keep a track of what's going off that site and what's going. So, I mean, rather than have to the expense of doing that report every year, I think the recycling system is in, it's worked fine. We've had no red flag on any issues since the start.
They've done a great job of booming off their parking lots.
Yeah.
They've maintained a boom, so anything
Yeah.
that rolls off the parking lot
Yeah.
doesn't get into the marsh around there. I checked that last
Yeah.
October. I was pretty impressed, because that was at least in good shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't, I mean, the important thing is it doesn't affect how that recycled material will be disposed. I mean, that's the.
No, it would not.
Okay.
Oh, no, yeah, they have to
It has to go.
monitor that offsite anyway. Yeah. And like I said, I think the first year we did it was, they've actually switched recycling systems to the process. They've got a more efficient one right now, and I don't even think it wasn't even a barrel. I mean, it was a little jug of what they, it wasn't even enough to test actually on the last time around.
So you're seeking the certificate of compliance without the...
Without any ongoing conditions.
Yeah, so I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine by me. So.
You said 18, 19, 20.
They're all
It's all
connected.
related to the.
Yeah. There is actually a report component in the upland, which is still open right now. The upland component, right now there's an in-water order conditions that's still open. There's an upland order. This one I'm closing out. There is a test, there is a report compliant in the upland condition, and until we close out that order conditions, until we close out the orders, we'll comply with the conditions on the original order. And I think that one was more, that had to do with the booms and the rainwater fall and everything else. And that's me going out and doing a yearly inspection of the booms and everything else. So we're not asking to close that now because that's still open.
Yeah.
It's more so that it's tied strictly to the recycling
To the wash
system.
down, to
Yes.
something. So Jeff, you're all right with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
So I have a motion to issue the certificate of compliance without ongoing conditions.
I think we had that motion.
Yes, that's what I said.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's those. Okay, now orders of conditions. What have we got here? Duke's Road, within the road layout. So this is Duke 53 LLC.
This is the one for the sewer system. To be honest, I really couldn't think of much, with the exception of that siltation control to be maintained until the road was returned to its as regular a condition as Duke Road has ever. No, as everything is within the actual
road,
dirt
yeah.
road.
Yeah, okay. So move to issue as drafted.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries with Commissioner Glowacki abstained.
All right, I guess while we're going down, because we closed Duke 55 LLC. I didn't draft one because I wasn't sure. Sorry, it was actually number 3 on the list there. That was for the The lot with the pool, Commissioner Goulet, is that, are there any thoughts on that one? Anything anyone was looking for, other than normal monitoring and pool conditions, or any thoughts?
I think maybe just monitoring if there is like channeling or runoff in that planting area, you know, if they are putting mulch to see.
This is that drainage area?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because I am
monitor that, yeah.
imagining them getting more runoff than they're expecting.
Sure. I'll add that in there.
So it's not in the packet, but,
No, I didn't draft an order for that one.
Okay.
so we can make suggestions and vote on it next week, or should we
Yes.
vote on it today?
No, we'll be doing that.
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah,
that.
we need to just take a copy.
Yeah, I don't like to have you guys just blindly.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not a good plan.
The order.
Yeah, do whatever you want, yeah. It's like a blank check.
Nope. I try to only write the orders in advance for the ones that we've either discussed before or ones that are pretty straightforward.
I think that's a good point.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
And I think that's... Okay, so then we're at Loretta Lane Nominee Trust, at 3 and 5 Loretta Lane.
Correct. This is the one that was for the brush cutting out in Pocono area. I gotta admit, I couldn't really.
They changed, yeah, they reduced it enough where I feel better about it.
There's no waivers required, and they're clearing the brush in compliance with the performance standards.
Yep.
Okay.
Yours drafted?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, do we do anything? Heron Theater.
All right, so White
North
Heron,
Water Street.
again, this is the one that's for the construction of the theater. I do have a typo on this one. The theater out on North Water Street there, it's just, we're within the flood zone. There are no waivers. I do have a typo, the order issue date should be, if we end up ordering it, should be 2015 instead of 2014. Welcome to January's of New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
But, was that fine with it? Yeah, I can't think of anything else on this.
Straightforward.
Move to issues drafted?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
Kelly, the road second.
Okay, then all of the Mariner Way ones. So,
Yep, so I actually, not to say I preemptively struck on that, I did the house lot ones, should be all in a row first, and they all are essentially the same, because none of them required waivers. And they were all, they didn't require waivers.
Yeah, I don't think we had any specific suggestions on.
No.
okay. So, okay, so which one?
Are there any monitoring of the revegetation on that lot 3?
Most of that revegetation that they proposed is in conjunction with the road.
Okay, so it's, I'm just trying to figure out.
So
where
I think if we condition all of that stuff into the roadway one, where that proposal was part of, I think makes more sense.
Yeah, it probably
Mhm,
does.
I think
Just
so
making
too.
sure.
Because it looks like the roadway is more of a roadway and site prep, because the building removals and then the stone wall removals and things are all included in that roadway construction.
Yeah.
Then the houses were after that had taken place.
Okay. Well, let's see.
Guess we have to
So-
vote which one
How about a motion to issue Mariner Way lots 1 through 5 as drafted? Agenda items 9 through 13.
Do I have a
on our-
second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right.
That motion carries
Be careful.
unanimously.
You don't get the whole paperclip one together for these five, because the file number's gonna be kind of late, so they're separate, single pages. Yep, just sign the whole stack and.
Okay, so we need to discuss the roadway one.
Yeah, there's definitely some conditions that we wanted to add from our discussion. Correct, I think that would be better to put in like a condition 20 that would state whether the surface type of the roadway. And then I guess before we get to that, we should also have a condition in there that would be something to the effect of that prior to plantings, planting lists shall be submitted to commission staff for approval. And that way we can verify that it's all native plantings. Or if you guys would rather the planting list come here, we can do that too. But. And then I guess
Well, so what, we need staff approval on the planting list, and we need to decide whether we want to have a previous.
correct. So I'll put it this way. Then I would recommend that condition 21 would read that the roadway shall be constructed of either a pervious surface or an impervious surface, or whatever you guys. If you guys want to pave it out of bubble gum, you guys can request that it's paved out of bubble gum if you can justify why that's protecting the interest. So.
I think the pervious surface.
I think pervious
I think
too.
pervious too,
There's a
yeah.
million ways you can do it. I'll support both.
I would not permit this in that spot.
I wouldn't permit it.
They don't seem to be impervious anyway.
No, I think it's consensus, yeah.
Well, so is that, so I'll just be sure, so the draft that's kind of active now would be number 20, that prior to work, planting lists shall be submitted for staff approval. Then we have the one up above for monitoring, and then 21 would simply read that the roadway surface shall be constructed with a pervious material.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
What is there anything else that we
Yeah, anything else we need to do yet?
What material they choose.
Sure, we can have that roadway,
just to come-
roadway surface as a pervious surface, and that surface shall be submitted for staff
Do
approval.
we want a second drainage area on the other side of the road?
They can't.
I don't think we can.
They said they couldn't because of the property line.
Can they,
Oh, that's right, yeah.
you know,
It would have to be on that
some
lot.
If the road is gravel or
If the road is pervious, we
then
should,
that
yeah, that's
takes
probably
away-
better, yeah.
It actually helps them out.
Okay.
I think it was more if they want to also have a pervious road.
Yeah.
They want it pervious.
It makes
Yeah,
way
okay.
more sense for a million reasons.
This may actually help them in the long run.
Okay,
All right, so that-
so are we
Is
ready?
there
Do I
anything
have,
else we brought up that I'm forgetting? Okay. Then Mike has a motion to
Issue
issue with
as
those two
amended.
conditions.
So moved.
do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, Griswold at 14 Saken Road.
All right, this is the last one drafted. So this is one, I didn't really have a lot. I just wanted to have that monitoring report so we could see that that area regrows. I wanted to add too, and this is my apologies for not having this, number 20, that the restoration areas be allowed to revegetate naturally. I just wanted to memorialize that it wasn't to be by planting.
Someone mentioned marking the 25 foot, so it
Yeah.
doesn't get mowed.
Having some kind of a demarcation, permanent demarcation.
Yeah, if we want, we could also add restoration, put that condition 20, that the restoration areas are to be allowed to revegetate naturally and are also to be marked by, some sort of marking on the ground. I think a way to put that wording wise, now that I said that out loud. Or here, I'll just say that, you can just put that the limit of work shall be marked with permanent markers.
Mhm.
Shall be maintained. It's always a tricky one.
Yeah.
Structure.
Fence in there.
Well, I know a lot of people have gotten creative and put like a landscape rock or, something that's there and then a couple pieces of
Even
fencing or,
rebars and
yeah. Everyone has got their own little flair.
So, you ready for a motion to issue as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously.
And then the only other one that we closed tonight, and I apologize for not getting this one done, but literally the file number came in while we were here, was that flood zone project on 50 Holbert Ave. It was just a, there.
Yeah. That
I'll
was
just draft
super.
a positive one.
Yep.
for that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else we close that you need?
Nope.
Pass on?
That's all of it.
Okay, so now, on page, other business monitoring reports.
I don't know.
I don't think we have any. I didn't see any, no.
I don't believe any. So I've just been trying to leave it on there in case there are some, if there are questions.
And we did have the minutes from last week, I believe, weren't they?
Yep.
Unless there's comments on those minutes, we can approve them by unanimous consent. Not hearing any comments, we'll approve those by unanimous consent.
I like it.
Okay, reports. CPC,
Nothing to report.
MPMEDC.
Not for, nope.
It has been the holidays. Mosquito Control Committee.
Not until next week.
Anything else?
On the 15th, there's a fisheries hearing to be held here at noon on a whole series of fisheries regulations for Nantucket Sound by the National Marine Fisheries on squid and bass and pretty much every regulation around the island. So if you're interested in that, it's rare for
When
them
is
to
it?
hold a hearing. The 15th? Thursday
Thursday the 15th at noon, right below us.
Yeah, it's pretty important. It's pretty cool that they're doing it, so I'm definitely going.
Yeah, we had to beg and plead, so please share that with everyone that has
Sure,
any interest
yeah, we
in
want people to show up.
fishing
so
or-
that they keep having these hearings here.
especially, one of the big issues that's up for debate, and not to hold everyone here, is relates to the small mesh squid fishery and those
Oh,
impacts and the extension that the Division of Marine Fisheries have been granting to that fishery to extend through the summer months, pretty much all the way up, adjacent to the shore on Nantucket. And there seems to be at least some thought that there's been a detrimental effect on the squid and food population around the island for some of the other larger fish. So,
And
not to
habitat.
mention what the habitat damaged by having draggers come through is. So, again, if you have any interest, there's other regulations that are important. They're going to be talking about striped bass management as part of it. There's some regulation changes that are being proposed to the harvesting of whelks, which we do have a few local whelk fishermen, but it also has some recreational impacts for kind of bag limits for whelks and some other requirements for recreational fishermen. And there are a few other things that aren't quite as related to here that are still going on, but again, I don't want to say we had to beg and plead to have this meeting here, but it's a series. They're having the same meeting in 3 other spots in kind of the next 2 weeks, so it'd be nice to have them out, so please share that with anyone that has any fishery concerns.
I moved 2 meetings just to make sure I could be there.
What time is that?
Noon.
Noon.
Downstairs.
Okay. So commissioners' comments.
I just had a question. We had mentioned when I first got on the commission about getting someone to educate us all about invasive species, and I know some of us want it and don't, but it's kind of a slow time here, so I didn't know how people were feeling about that, because we never kind of followed through.
We could try to set something up, certainly.
Yeah, we can bring Kelly and
Mm-hmm.
maybe Sarah Trainer in.
Just before things start kind of coming to life again.
Right.
To happen.
Certainly. And we can also have some folks from off-island that do invasive work too that may be willing to come over. So it's, I don't want to say for fresh perspectives, but if we're going to have a number of people in that can provide some insights or what they're seeing or trying elsewhere too, than on Nantucket with some success. But we can certainly try to set up a, I hate to steal the selectman's term, a conservation commission workshop of some kind related
Wow.
to invasive species.
And if anybody wants to attend our meetings of the biodiversity group that deals with invasive species, you're welcome to attend if you want to come.
Okay.
Or anybody.
We'll find out when they are.
Well, we'll just get you on the email list. Would you be interested?
Yeah, I would like to do that.
Or if you guys have those, when you notice those out, Ernie, if you send the meeting notice to me, I can just distribute it amongst the commission and whoever wants to go to.
Remind me of that, Sarah.
Okay. Only thing I sent this to Jeff. Rob Young's willing to come pro bono if expenses are paid to give us any kind of advice or suggestions on geotubes, and he spoke in front of us once before, and so I sent that to Jeff. And
I think there's a couple other things, and then we're going to try to get a few people in and around and
let me know
help
if you
and
need
provide
any
some things for the public too. So
contact information or stuff. I'm just forwarding the track to Jeff. I thought that was nice of him.
I just want to thank the commissioners and especially Jeff for the time put in on this SBPF superseding order of conditions, especially over the holidays. I know everybody's got family and friends out and are traveling, but thanks everybody for taking the time to look it over and come to the meeting and stuff, and et cetera.
Well, on that note, Mr. Chairman, should we get in a situation where we're going to have further executive sessions and discuss with legal counsel, I would hope that we could make sure that we allow adequate time so we don't get in a situation again where we're under some kind of pressure to wrap it up and without an opportunity to fully explore and discuss pros and cons of the various initiatives.
Yeah, I think that was an unfortunate
There's a whole
series of circumstances.
combination of circumstances. I
Yeah.
understand that, but it just did feel like enough said, probably.
Well, we were just under pressure to have the meeting and get it done, so he'd have time to put something together by the deadline, and
That's a fair comment, though. I
Yeah.
think.
yeah,
more
and
time is always nicer.
Especially when DEP takes
Yes.
stuff.
So, with that, if it's my turn, I have one thing else I want to add. Not to belabor any more meetings for anyone, but next week at the Selectmen's Workshop is the first item on the agenda. It's at 6 p.m. We're going to be discussing the loss of eelgrass, primarily in Nantucket Harbor, and then water quality issues. Some of the things that are kind of on the table for discussion include fertilizers, moorings and anchorage, and change of the anchorage area within the harbor, septics and sewers, kind of the whole gambit. But I think there's been a definite concern with the amount of eelgrass that appears to be missing this year by the scallop fleet and some of those other things going around. So I don't say it's kind of a hot topic, but it's kind of a hot topic. So the workshop next week is there. So
when is that?
That is next week at 6 p.m.
Wednesday?
on Wednesday.
On
So
their regular meeting night?
yep, regular meeting night. So it would be right now. We'd be about a half hour into it. We are first because after the water quality section is an HDC appeal. So it shouldn't be too long.
Is Stella coming down to the state? Because he's been monitoring that for the state.
Charlie's working right now with Tara and I, and then when Caitlin starts next week on a project where we're going to be doing some different eelgrass monitoring and setting up a little bit better sampling regime for doing those things.
2 or 3 years that are straight out from the field station.
Yeah, that would be
pretty
helpful.
thorough. I've also I got to get a hold of Mark Borelli, with Funstone Center for Coastal Studies, but I did a complete side scan sonar of the whole harbor.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and that'll show all the eelgrass. I think a lot of the senators understand.
So that's one of our projects kind of upcoming for this year, but it's definitely been a bit of a buzz, especially.
Think it got buried? The eelgrass?
In front of the field station, it's moved back about 150 feet because we've been doing transects away from the beach, and it's way, way out. But we also lost 3 feet of bank, and the water depth now is 2 feet shallower, so it's just buried under sand.
So again, if you have any interest in,
it should grow back through.
I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if this is a permanent loss or is it temporary? I mean, is this?
Well, I
just
think that's
steadily-
what we want to do. That's what we want to do a better job of knowing. So one of the things we're working with some of the people with the state is to set up kind of a long-term monitoring and sampling thing that can be done successfully. So, but again, that next week at the selected meeting, that's kind of where we're going to get some direction from what they would like to see. I know one of the action items, it sounds like it's going to come out of it, not to steal it, is some of it's going to go back to SHAB for their review and discussion a little bit. So it should be a very productive selected meeting. So,
And I've got a lot of data, I just have to let people to get it.
yeah, again, so
What was the time? I'm sorry. What was the time?
6
again?
p.m.
6 o'clock.
Fisheries.
fisheries at noon,
Yeah.
and that's the next day. It's at noon.
Yeah.
14th for that meeting, 15th.
Yep, that's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Joe. If there's nothing else, you have to have a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thanks, everybody. Now you can have a lift home.
Yeah.
Thanks.